Hi, everyone. Um, I really got distracted over this last week and didn't plan ahead and schedule everything like I usually do. So I do apologize for being spur of the moment here. Um, I am still having a Bible study tonight. I just totally forgot to set it up through StreamYard. So this is just directly a live presentation. Um, I'm not using StreamYard. I do apologize again. I'm hoping that some of you will notice that I'm live and be ready to be here or show up soon. I'm still continuing my lessons on Christian evidences, and I would like to. Hi, Seagull. Good to see you. I'm not here to tell a joke tonight. Well, I guess I could tell one. Let's see. There was one I was thinking of earlier. Oh, someone asked me what my views on uh, fasting are religiously, and I said I'm too slow to fast. Hey, Ozark, good to see you. Is the air conditioner making too much noise? Let me know. Thanks for stopping in, Foxx. Okay, because it's really hot in my house, and I don't want to turn the AC off. It's right next to me, so it does make a bit of noise. Um, before I start the lesson, I always like to sing a hymn, and I don't really have this one memorized, so I thought I would pull out my songbook and my hymn book and sing it for you. This is called Beautiful Isle of Somewhere. Somewhere the sun is shining, somewhere the songbirds dwell. Hushed in thy sad repining, God lives and all is well. Somewhere, somewhere, beautiful isle of somewhere, land of the true, where we live anew. Beautiful isle of somewhere, somewhere the day is longer, somewhere the task is done, somewhere the heart is stronger, somewhere the burden won, somewhere, somewhere, beautiful isle of somewhere, land of the true, where we live anew. Beautiful isle of somewhere, somewhere the load is lifted, close by an open gate. Somewhere the clouds are rifted, somewhere the angels wait. Somewhere, somewhere, beautiful isle of somewhere, land of the true, where we live anew. Beautiful isle of somewhere. That hymn, okay, our lesson tonight on Christian evidences. This is going to be a bit longer than the last couple of them that I've done. Um, we're going to be focusing on the moral law within. I love that song too. Um, so a lot of this, I'm going to be quoting other people that have made these arguments about the moral law within being an evidence that there is a God. So some of it might be a little tedious because I'm reading quotes. I'm reading quotes from other people. Um, so in his critique of practical reason, a man named Immanuel Kant wrote the following: two things fill the mind with admiration and awe: the starry heavens above and the moral law within. Kant was referring to the uniform universe, which we shall consider in later lessons, and to the sense of ought, which is our concern tonight. This sense of ought is this moral sense within man. It is not merely the result of the customs of his culture. It is an innate capacity to know right and wrong. That man has this capacity can hardly be explained unless there is a moral governor of the universe. It implies a moral creator, God. It is universally observed that human beings try to convince themselves that their actions are right and justifiable. They desire the approval of their consciences as well as the approval of their fellow men. Is it unreasonable to assume that the presence of a moral nature within man is an indication of a moral governor? Why should man be concerned with the demands of conscience if he is nothing more than a chance combination of atoms? This is an aspect of man's nature that makes him unique, for the other creatures of the earth do not have this inner moral sense. For example, an ox has no sense of right or wrong. Hi, Chris. Good to see you. For example, an ox has no sense of right and wrong. If an ox gores a man to death, he is not arrested, tried, and condemned to the electric chair. Rather, we recognize his ability to make his inability to make moral judgments, and we confine the ox in a sturdier pen and warn everyone not to come near that ox. When a man commits the same crime of killing a man, his treatment is vastly different. The only reason that it is logical for it to be different is that man has an ethical and moral sense of what is right and wrong. We are not speaking, when we speak of the moral law within, of any one system or set of principles, but we are speaking of man's innate capacity to know right from wrong. It's akin to his conscience. This is uniquely a human quality, for animals do not possess a conscience. It is a significant part of what is meant in the scriptures when we read that man was created in the image of God in Genesis 1, verse 26. This capacity within man is evidence that of the existence of God, for unless there were a moral creator behind him, man could not have this unique quality. This inner sense of right and wrong is referred to from time to time in the scriptures as well. For example, the Apostle Paul recognized it when he wrote this passage in Romans. He wrote to the church in Rome, we Gentiles that have not the law to do by nature the things of the law, these not having the law are the law unto themselves, in that they show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience bearing witness therewith, and their thoughts one with another, accusing or else excusing them. You might want to read your own Bible. You might have a better, an easier to understand translation than that one. That was from the King James Version, the old King James. But that passage is found in Romans chapter 2, verses 14 and 15, if you want to look at that in your own Bible. Paul seems to be saying that those who never knew of the law of Moses would not be judged by that law, which they had no opportunity to know, but would be judged based on their own sense of right and wrong, the law written in their hearts. Theoretically, according to this teaching, it is possible for man not to sin. If he lives his life perfectly to the best of his ability, he can possibly do this. He never becomes a sinner and therefore is never lost. However, we hasten to add that it is all but impossible for anyone to live their life without sinning at all. And the Bible points that out multiple times. All fall short in sin, basically. Um, Inevitably, he will violate his sense of right conduct. When a man does this, he becomes a sinner and is lost or estranged from God. The emphasis of the New Testament is that the only hope of salvation is in Jesus Christ. Only through the love of God as manifest in Christ can be forgiven and saved, according to John 3:16. Hence, Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. John 14, verse 6. So now we're going to talk about the law of human nature, which is still basically talking about the moral law within man. I'm going to be quoting quite a bit from C.S. Lewis. I'm sure most of you know who C.S. Lewis was. C.S. Lewis was one of the world's most effective apologists for the Christian religion. He had himself been an atheist or agnostic in his earlier years, but he eventually came to a solid faith in the existence of God and the validity of the Christian religion. In his book, Mere Christianity, he published a series of radio talks made over the British Broadcasting Company stations in the United Kingdom. In a series of 5 relatively brief talks, he showed in a very meaningful way how the moral law within man is an evidence of the existence of God. The following paragraphs are taken from these radio talks. Lewis presented the moral nature of man as a major argument for the existence of a moral creator behind the universe. He said, everyone has heard people quarreling. Sometimes it sounds funny and sometimes it sounds merely unpleasant. But however it sounds, I believe we can learn something very important from listening to the kinds of things that they say. They say things like this: how do you like it if anyone did the same thing to you? Or, that's my seat. I was there first. Or, leave him alone. He isn't doing you any bit of harm. Someone might say, why should you shove shove in first? Give me a bit of your orange. I gave you a bit of mine. Or they might say, come on, you promised. People say things like that every day, educated people as well as uneducated, and children as well as grown-ups. Mankind is appealing to some kind of standard of behavior, which he expects the other man to know about. Nearly always, he tries to make out that what he has been doing does not really go against the standard, or that if it does, there is some special excuse. Does anybody have any questions or comments right now? I know I'm reading these quotes. I'm not sure how clear they are to the average person because these men that I'm quoting from are highly intelligent. So sometimes they use words that are not very familiar to the average person. Um, okay, thank you, Ozark. I'll continue. C.S. Lewis also says it looks, in fact, very much as if both parties had in mind some kind of law or rule of fair play or decent behavior or morality or whatever you like to call it, about which they agreed on. And, and they have agreed on it. If they had not, they might, of course, fight like animals, but they could not quarrel in the human sense of the word. Quarreling means trying to show that the other person is in the wrong. And there would be no sense in trying to do that unless you were you and he had some sort of agreement as to what right and wrong are. Just as there would be no sense in saying that a footballer had committed a foul unless there were some agreement about the rules of football. I'm sure he's talking about soccer because we don't call football players in America footballers. Hi, hippie grandma. Keep in mind, C.S. Lewis was British. Okay. Now, this law or rule about right or wrong used to be called the law of nature. What they really meant was the law of human nature. Later, C.S. Lewis said this. He said, I know that some people say the idea of a law of human nature or decent behavior known to all men is unsound because different civilizations in different ages have had quite different moralities. But this is not true. There have been differences between their moralities, but these have never amounted to anything like a total difference. If anyone will take the trouble to compare the moral teachings of, say, the ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, Hindus, Chinese, Greeks, and Romans, what will really strike him will be how very much alike they are to each other and to our own. Think of a country where people were admired for running away in battle, or where a man felt proud of double crossing all the people who had been kindest to him. You might just as well try to imagine a country where two and two made five. Selfishness has never been admired. Men have differed as to whether you should have one wife or four, but they have always agreed that you must not simply have any woman you like. None of us are really keeping the law of human nature this year or in this month or more likely this very day. We have failed to practice ourselves the kind of behavior we expect from other people. The truth is, we believe in decency so much, we feel the rule or law pressing on us so that we cannot bear to face the fact that we are breaking it. And consequently, we try to shift the responsibility. For you notice that it is only for our bad behavior that we find all these explanations. It is only our bad temper that we put down to being tired or worried or hungry. That's the excuse we make. We put our good temper down to ourselves. We'll take credit for that if we have a good temper. These then are the 2 points I want to make. First, that human beings all over the earth have this curious idea that they ought to behave in a certain way and cannot really get rid of it. Secondly, that they do not, in fact, behave in that way. Some objected to Lewis's argument, so he responded in a subsequent radio talk and said this. Isn't what you call the moral law simply our herd instinct? And hasn't it been developed just like all our other instincts? We know that what it feels, or we all know what it feels like to be prompted by instinct, by mother love, or sexual instinct or the instinct for food. But feeling a desire to help is quite different from feeling that you ought to help whether you want to or not. The illustration Lewis used is of a man who suddenly is faced with an emergency situation. Standing on the bank of a swiftly moving stream, he notices someone in the water about to drown, calling for help. Two instincts or impulses immediately register themselves. The first one is the desire to plunge into the water and help save the man's life. The second is the desire to avoid danger and not to risk your own life in attempting to rescue another person. Lewis continued, but you will find inside you, in addition to these two impulses, a third thing which tells you that you ought to follow the impulse to help and suppress the impulse to run away. Now, this thing that judges between two instincts, that decides which should be encouraged, cannot itself be either of them. If two instincts are in conflict, either to help or not help and stay safe, run away, and there is nothing in a creature's mind except those two instincts, obviously, the stronger of the two must win. But at those moments when we are most conscious of the moral law, it usually seems to be telling us to side with the weaker of the two impulses. Lewis next faced the objection that what he has been calling the law of human nature is merely social convention, something that is put into us by education, and that these social conventions differ from country to country and from civilization to civilization. C.S. Lewis responded that while there are differences of customs, there is a hard central area of ethical and moral law that is almost universal. He continued, the moment you say that one set of moral ideas can be better than another, you are in fact measuring them both by a standard, saying that one of them conforms to that standard more nearly than the other. But the standard that measures two things is something different from either. You are in fact comparing them both with some real morality, and the reason why your idea of New York can be truer or less true than mine is that New York is a real place existing quite apart from what either of us thinks. Lewis' arguments were designed to demonstrate that if there is a sense of ought within man, there must be some kind of moral or ethical being behind the universe. Man cannot, if he is a moral being, be simply an accidental concourse of atoms. Lewis stated it this way: we have only got as far as a somebody or something behind the moral law. We are not taking anything from the Bible or the churches. We are trying to see what we can find out about this somebody on our own steam. We have two bits of evidence about the somebody. One is the universe he has made, and the other bit of evidence is that moral law which he has put into our minds. So we have the universe, and then we have that moral law that he put in our minds. Um, any questions so far? Okay, I will continue if there's no questions or comments. Um, for some additional support about this, there was a man named Dr. Henry M. Morris, and he was an engineer. He makes the following comment. One further conclusion comes easily. There is something in our own finite personalities that we call a conscience or moral urge. Whatever it is, each individual, however morally ignorant, recognizes something in him that tells him that he ought to do the thing that is right morally and ought to shun the wrong, even though individual standards as to what constitutes right and wrong seem to vary somewhat with time and place. As far as personalities in the universe are concerned, at least it is a moral universe. Therefore, the Creator is a moral being who has placed in his creatures a moral consciousness. Another man named Dr. James D. Bales was an educator, and he holds that the unpredictable nature of man indicates that there is something in man that is not under the laws of mechanical force or matter. It is difficult to make an occasional prediction of the choice that man will make between various alternatives before him, and the choice is not necessarily an unavoidable decision. Dr. Robert Horton Cameron was a mathematician, and he argued that man is a creature of choice, which implies that he is not merely a product of mechanistic influences and pressures. Is there a God? That question implies thought and an ability to think. I cannot conceive of such an ability without an enabling power. I am not an automation. Logic can decide whether a mathematical argument is a proof, but thought can create the argument in the first place. It can invent new mathematical concepts and discover new theorems. Thought involves the possibility of self analysis and self criticism. A machine can be built to play chess, but it cannot chuckle over an opponent's mistake or regret a mistake of its own. Thought involves something that goes beyond a mechanism or mechanical rules. To me, it indicates that a mechanistic philosophy is inadequate to explain man or mankind. I can think. I also believe in God because he has given me emotions. Our very emotional nature is an evidence of the Creator's wisdom. What would our lives be like without emotions? How long would the race survive without the sex urge and the emotions connected with it? Why is it that infant mortality is lowest when babies are loved? I believe in God because he has given me moral judgment. The race has an innate sense of right and wrong. My belief in God is also based on intelligent volition, on the human will, which has been explained as the total conscious process involved in effecting a decision. Will is one of the three great divisions into which psychologists usually divide the powers of the mind, the others being cognition and feeling. I desire, I crave something, my intellect renders its decision, and my will carries it out. Hi, Kimmy. Good to see you. Um, I feel like I've raced through this material. Um, I have just a little bit more to say, but I'm open to any comments or questions that anybody has. Okay. Uh, okay. I'm just going to continue with my conclusion, which is not very long. Um, the fact that men are creatures of choice, and the further fact that their choices are made in terms of some awareness of moral and ethical principles are firm evidences that they originated from a source that also had the capacity of making moral judgments. The atheist has a severe burden of proof at this point. In order for his position to be accepted, he must demonstrate how a morally responsible being could come from a purely materialistic source. Particularly impressive is the fact that man functions not merely in the direction of his strongest instincts, and that decides which should be encouraged. Often it is the weaker instinct on which man acts, because it is ethically and morally superior to the other stronger instinct. This unique quality in man demands a moral architect and designer. I think that's pretty powerful. That's just my opinion, but that's the way I see it. Um, so often, the stronger instinct is for self-preservation, but we see people often, especially like in law enforcement and firefighters, and even in the military as well, people fight that urge to protect themselves and will risk their lives to save someone else. Or they'll run into a house or a building that's burning. We saw that on 9/11. Those towers were on the verge of collapse. They they knew they were on the verge of collapse, and they raced in there to try to save as many people as they could. And some surprisingly were saved by those brave firefighters. Another thing that I like to think about is that bravery is not the absence of fear. It's doing what is right even in the presence of fear. You know, that always hit me hard. I heard that in a movie once, and I just thought that was really powerfully said. Um, it's so true. Anyone who does something brave will tell you they were terribly afraid, but they did what they did because they felt like it was the morally right thing to do. That just that's to me that's powerful. Um, we're gonna cover some other things in the next several lessons that show evidences that there is a God. Um, Hi, Lady Campion. Good to see you, Mr. Cheddar Pepper. You say your brother got a computer to say the Lord's Prayer. He asked what I thought of it. I told him I didn't like it because it was going through the motions. It means nothing at all to the computer. I think that's true. They don't have emotions. Um, and everybody's talking about artificial intelligence these days, but they're never really going to be able to create anything artificially intelligent that will have a moral sense within itself of right and wrong. They will never be able to create something that can express emotions, not and not be just like a puppet. They may you might make something mechanically cry, but it's not really crying. There's no emotion tied to it, if you know what I mean. We've had little dolls that could cry, little baby dolls that could cry, but they don't sound real, do they? I mean, they don't sound like they're hurting the doll itself. I mean, it's not connected by any emotion at all. It's just a mechanical thing. Or something might cry, "Mama," but it's not really tied to anything emotional. It's just acting. It's like a puppet. Anyway, I don't really have any other thing to cover on this, but I'm open to any other comments that you'd like to share or questions. Also, if you have any prayer requests, I'll try to make that make sure that I pray for those things for you before the lesson is over. If There's a Twilight Zone episode called The Lonely. I'm not sure I've seen that. If I have, I don't remember it by the title. I've seen a lot of Twilight Zone though. I'm wondering if that relates to what we've been talking about. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, I don't remember them by the titles anyway. I'd have to know more about what it's talking about in the show, and that might trigger a memory. Okay, um, Kimmy, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'd forgotten all about that. That was tragic that their mother took her life. I'll definitely pray for her two sons. Yeah, I was a big fan of the Twilight Zone. It had a lot of moral messages in a lot of them. Oh, Prisoner on an Asteroid Gets a Female Robot. I do remember that episode. That was a good one. Yeah, if you tell me what it was about, that generally will trigger my memory, but a title doesn't do anything for me. Any other prayer requests? And I'll try to continue to pray for that that lady's sons throughout this week, not just tonight. I know that's got to be difficult for them emotionally and every other way. Okay, Nathan and Matthew, thank you for giving me their names. And what was your friend's name that took her life? Their mother? Or if you don't want to share that, that's fine. Oh, Susie. Okay. I'll definitely keep that family in my prayers throughout this week. Okay. Um, I always like to end with another hymn, and this one is, I think, appropriate because it's a song about prayer. So I thought I would share it, and it's not a very well known hymn, but I think it's a really beautiful hymn with a really wonderful message. Um, I'll sing it now, and if you have any other prayer requests, continue to put them in while I sing, and I'll try to add those as well when I close us out in the prayer. Okay, this is called Hear Me When I Call. It was written in 1962 by a man named Tillit S. Tedley. Hear me when I call, O God, my righteousness. Unto thee I come in weakness and distress. Hold my trembling hand, lest helpless I should fall. Oh, hear me, oh, hear me, oh, hear me when I call. Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. More and more I need thy mercy and thy care. Clouds of doubt arise, and faith grows weak and slow. Oh, hear me, Lord, hear me. Oh, hear me when I call. Hear my voice, O God, and cleanse my soul within. Mercy do I need for all my doubts and sins. Only in thy grace I trust my all in all. Oh, hear me, Lord, hear me. Oh, hear me when I call. Hear my prayer, O God. I need thy cleansing power. Let me feel thee near each moment of each hour. Hold my trembling hand, lest helpless I should fall. Oh, hear me, Lord, hear me. Oh, hear me when I call. Hi, Andy. I'll pray for your family's safety as well, Kimmy, and as you travel to your aunt's funeral. You put that on here. Thank you. I'm glad y'all liked the hymn. It is a beautiful hymn. I think it needs a lot more people to learn it and know it because it's really, to me, it's very powerful. A very powerful hymn. I really thank you all for being here. I'm sorry that I didn't plan ahead and prepare it like I usually do. I'll try to get several set up um, for the next few weeks so that I don't do that again. But I'm glad that you showed up for this Bible study, and I hope it was beneficial to you in some way. Um, Let me close this out with a prayer, and we'll call it a night. Okay? Please bow with me. Our loving Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you, and we know that we fail you often. We ask you forgive us when we sin against you, and help us to turn to you always and walk in the light as Jesus is in the light, and be a shining light in this dark world to those around us. Help us to spread your gospel and save souls as often as we can. And we hope that everything that was done tonight was pleasing in your sight in this lesson, and just hope that the truth is spread and people will come to know you and love you, and that they will learn that the only way to you is through Jesus and his blood. We thank you so much for that sacrifice. Please be with the leaders of our country as well as the leaders of all other countries. Help them to make wise decisions. And we ask that, if it be your will, that the wars will end soon and lives will not be lost any more than there already have been, but sometimes these wars are your will and sometimes they're not. We just ask that you help them to make wise decisions and seek peace, especially in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Gaza, um, and the Hamas. We ask that your will be done in all things. And thank you for all the ways you bless us every day. Help us not to take anything for granted. And lastly, I'd like to ask that you be with Kimmy's best friend's sons. Um, their mother, Susie, took her life, and we ask that you be with her sons, Nathan and Matthew, and keep them, comfort them in ways that only you can. Help them to look to you for strength and guidance in their lives, and help all who are affected by that loss. Um, Anyone who knew her and loved her, because it is a huge uh, blow in life to lose someone that you care about, and just help them to deal with their grief and find a way to move forward with you in their lives and be a blessing to those around them. We also ask that you be with Kimmy's family and keep them safe while they travel to her aunt's funeral and back. Keep them safe and again comfort them and all who are grieving over the loss of her aunt. Um, Anyone else that we may not have learned about that you know of that may be struggling financially, emotionally, or spiritually, we ask that you help them as well and help us to reach out to those around us who may be hurting and be that one person that can help them realize they are not alone in this world. And we love you so much for all that you've done for us, and we ask these things humbly in Jesus' holy name. Amen. I hope you have a wonderful night and a great rest of your week, and may God bless you all. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.